The poster for the upcoming Wicked movie ignites a controversy. A fast food chain reveals the exciting entertainment app they've been cooking up for customers. And the spooky season is once again upon us, leading many Christians to ask just how they should approach Halloween. We talk about all that and more on this week's episode of Faith and Pop Culture. Hey, well, what is up, everyone? Welcome to episode number 33 of the Faith and Pop Culture Podcast. It is me, your host, Daniel, and I am joined at the desk, as I always am, by the epic finisher move to my 90s pro wrestler, Mr. Samuel David Camp. What is up?
Oh, not too much, Daniel. Good to be with you.
Did you ever dabble in some 90s pro wrestling?
I did dabble a little bit. I was never really, into it, you could say, but I had friends who were big fans, and you know, I'm at least aware of a lot of the 90s pro wrestling stuff.
Unless you would bike ride to the video rental store and get a VHS of Royal Rumble 91 and then go watch it and then reenact it on the trampoline after.
Yeah.
Did you actually have a childhood?
Yeah, it's amazing that any of us made it to adulthood, considering 90s wrestling and trampolines with no side rail.
Oh yeah.
We have a trampoline for our kids, and it's got the netting, and and I remember as a 10-year-old going to my cousins and bouncing on their trampoline, and there was never intended to be a netting on those trampolines. They were so incredibly dangerous.
Oh yeah, I mean,
looking back at that,
I've lost count of the number of times I was choke slammed a little too close to the edge, and
yeah.
It's amazing that my back is not.
We would drag it next to the above ground 4-foot pool and just trampoline into the pool, which was also probably dangerous. Yeah, those are don't do that, kids.
When you become a parent, you realize oh, this is why my parents were stressed all the time, because kids are doing crazy things. But we're excited that you have joined us. Because there's a lot of stuff going on this week. There's a lot of different stories and, kind of a wide range of, the buffet has been set before us.
Yeah.
Many, flavors for all different people and tastes. So, excited for you guys to join us and just dive into it from a Christian perspective. And kind of the first thing, at least to mention, kind of start off on the more somber note before we get into some controversies and some other stuff. But that is that, as has seemed to be a trend in the last, I feel like we've been doing this a bunch of episodes lately, where sort of a celebrity, a pop culture figure, either tragically or just, natural causes, passes away. And kind of the big, one of the big stories this week in pop culture is that we did lose another celebrity, another, entertainer, and that is Mr. Liam Payne, who I think most, maybe all people know for his role in One Direction. The pop band, and rose to fame, but he passed away at a hotel. He was out, I think, doing a tour at 31 years old. So I mean,
perhaps younger than some people on this podcast.
Yeah, it's crazy. And again, we don't want to get on to all the details for it. It seems like drug use, alcohol, was involved, and that it may have been a suicide, although obviously not in his right mind for that. What do you think of sort of the news of this as you saw it?
Well, I mean, it's obviously a tragedy, and I think it's another unfortunate and of many examples of how I think fame and popularity aren't necessarily the thing that people think it is. I think we can idolize pop stars and the rich and the famous, and we still do, obviously to this day. But I don't know that any of us would really actually want that life. There would be obvious benefits, I think, to it. But I think it's you just don't know the hurt that some people have to endure. And, I think for many people, especially if they're super famous, that there's not really an escape. There's no way to kind of turn off fame for a minute and let me just go over here and breathe and just kind of collect myself, and then I'll come back and be famous again. And I think it's just, I don't know that the human brain was meant for fame. And so it's just so much, I think, for, I don't know, and who, I have no idea, obviously, the ins and outs of his life and, his death and But I just think it's one of those things where, we don't treat famous people as people, especially in America. And so I just think it's another example of sort of possibly the results of some of
Yeah,
that.
I think there is like a dehumanization, and I think just that kind of level of fame and attention, public recognition, just breeds a lot of like loneliness, like
Yeah.
because we don't see them as people, you know, just from all the stories, all the interviews and stuff. Like
Yeah.
there is this sort of that sense of like, is there anyone that like sees me, or am I just sort of this like this
Yeah.
unhuman figure that
Well, you're
people
just
latch on to, and people are attracted to like the fame or some of that lifestyle, but like not necessarily to like that this is like a person that was born and grew up and wasn't like they were born famous. Like it's there's more to them than just sort of that superficial layer.
Well, and I think, we don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but I think like back in the day before cell phones, like you'd see a famous person and it's like, oh, I want to get their autograph, or hey, you kind of, I think you could have these sort of quasi normal interactions. But I feel like now, like when you see famous people, it's like, can I get a selfie? And it almost has nothing to do with like the famous person. It's like, I'm gonna go post this and like see how many likes I can get because I'm using this famous person that I happen to bump into. Like, and I know like not everyone does that, but it's just like it adds with social media. There's like a level of dehumanization I think that happens because now everybody's just sort of wanting to use that person or that interaction to like boost your own
Yeah, it gets very
ego.
much like a means to an end. Like
Yeah.
it's like, sort of leeching off of this person's recognizability and all that stuff, and in order to sort of point the spotlight a little bit to ourselves. So hey, it is tragic. I know all the details and stuff. There's a lot that will still come out about that. But I think whenever anyone dies in a way like that,
Yeah.
it's tragic, especially someone that is 31. So young. Kind of another big story that has been this floating around, and it was one that I wanted to dive into because there's aspects of it, and I feel like it is a story that like there's sort of the details of this specific story, but in many ways like it's like encapsulates so much of this wider cultural like.
Is this another pop culture story that has broader implications, Daniel?
This is you can put that on a t-shirt, and that is the kind of movie poster controversy for the upcoming film Wicked, which I think comes out
Yeah.
in mid-November. Based on the super popular Broadway play,
Yeah.
which itself was based on a book that came out before that, like a musical. I mean, it seems like one of the more like anticipated films of the year. It's like two parts, massive. It's like 2 3-hour movies or something. It's gonna
Is
be
it really?
Yeah. This is like
Wow.
part one. I've never seen the play. I don't know if you ever saw the. My
No.
wife went and saw it.
My wife has seen it, and we have the soundtrack, I think, to it in our car, and so I've listened to a lot of the songs, but I'm still not exactly clear on all the plot and everything.
Yeah. Well, I was ahead of the game as I tend to be with culture.
Yeah.
And I read the book
Oh,
before
wow.
the play even existed. So
We're not worthy.
I was sort of living on the mountaintop, knowing before the rest of those peasants out there recognize the greatness. And actually, it's not a good book, but I've heard the play is really good. But it's sort of it's been in the news the last couple of days for different reasons, for some good old fashioned controversy. So the movie released a poster, an official movie poster the other day that was clearly like intentionally paying homage to the Broadway one. That's sort of like the iconic, many of you probably recognize it. You have like the Wicked Witch and the hats over the eyes and kind of shadow, and she's like smirking, and you have like the Good Witch Glinda is like whispering in her ear, and like that sort of being the Broadway play for as long as the play has been going on.
It's an iconic poster for
Yeah,
sure.
everyone can instantly recognize. Oh, that's that Wicked play. So they released a poster, sort of trying to reflect that, although like with slight differences.
Subtle changes.
The main thing being that the actress who plays the Wicked Witch, Cynthia Erivo, is like looking right at the camera. They're not straightening her face, and like it's she's sort of like staring right down the center of the camera. And but for the most part, the poster is the same. Well, as has become common with like just social media and like Photoshop and stuff, some people like online, some fans took it upon themselves to like edit it. To like, hey, here's a poster. Like, and like post. I think the one that went viral was like a TikTok one where someone like kind of showed the process too of like 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 a time lapse of like here's how I sort of made this look, and so like they lowered the hat and they added the shading and like they changed some of the the clothing and like essentially tried to like use the movie poster version to recreate the Broadway person
Yeah.
thing, which hey seems like hey that's good fun. You would think, but Cynthia Ervio was not happy. She did not see this as good fun. So she posted on her own social media kind of a post in response to like discovering this fan edit where she said this is the wildest, most offensive thing I have ever seen. Equal to the awful AI of us fighting, equal to people posing a question, an inappropriate question. Says, none of this is funny, none of this is cute. It degrades me, it degrades us. The original poster is an illustration. I am a real life human being who chose to look right down the barrel of the camera to you, the viewer, because without words, we communicate with our eyes. Our poster is an homage, not an imitation. To edit my face and hide my eyes is to erase me. And that is just deeply hurtful. So she went right at it. Like she was not
Strong words.
I mean, like you don't get much stronger than this is the wildest, most offensive thing I have ever seen.
Yeah,
because you assume she's seen a lot, and this is the wildest, most offensive of all those things that she has seen. And because of that, a lot of the narrative about this movie sort of shifted to this discussion.
Yeah,
because even like they were doing a red carpet where Ariana Grande, who plays Glinda in the movie, was like essentially asked to weigh in on the controversy, and her answer is funny because she like you can tell she doesn't really feel as strongly. Like she's like she sort of dances around like, well, AI stuff can be weird and it can be challenging, but like I really support my sister, Cynthia, and sort of like, hey, I'm on your team, but I'm not gonna spit fire the same way that you were about this. So it became this big issue. I think the person that made the picture, the edit, originally took it down. I just didn't want to deal with the backlash.
Yeah.
But as of today, as we're recording this podcast, they re-uploaded it and kind of like spoke out for the first time, in I guess defense of themselves and what they did, and where they said, okay, so I've decided to repost this. The last few days have been wild and have helped me realize that the initial reaction was largely overblown. This is, and always was, an innocent fan edit to pay homage to the original Broadway poster, and there's nothing wrong with that. Also, I will say that Cynthia is valid in having her feelings on the matter, and I'm also valid in wanting to keep my version of the poster up, as I truly meant no harm with it, and just made it as a way to show my love for the original. Both can be true. So it's an interesting situation. Because in some ways that seems like just some dumb little controversy thing that, like there's more important things for us to be outraged about.
Yeah.
But I feel like it also is representative of a lot of stuff. Like, because there's been similar things to this of, just kind of outrage, almost for outrage's sake, or else overblowing, like sort of this victimhood stuff. But what are some of your initial takes on this?
No, I mean, I do think a lot of it is, it does seem overblown. Like, I think, having never been in the position that Cynthia is in, like, so I can't speak to how I would feel in that situation. But it does seem like, and also having heard from the person who edited it, like it wasn't like I don't see the offense aspect of it, and it seems like a lot of being very upset about something that maybe isn't really there, and I think we see this, like, I think this is a very common thing, is to sort of impute intentions behind something that gets created. It's like, so she's assuming that like this person edited this as a means of like erasing her, and like it was because of her that this person like had a deep animosity towards and was trying to like, eradicate her from the poster, which is kind of a really weird and very like down the dark side take of what happened. And it's like, okay, you did a thing and you showed your eyes, and some people thought, hey, it would have been cooler to not do that. And it's like, okay, like people have differences of opinion. Like I don't see the, at least for me, I don't see the great harm in this. Um, and I think the problem is you can't just be like, I didn't like that. Like, I think his edit is dumb. I wish like we didn't intend to do it that way. And that would be the end of it. But to then go after and be like, this person has deeply hurt me, and it's like it's the most offensive thing. And it's like I'm pretty sure there are more offensive things than like editing slightly a photo.
Yeah, because I think you're right. I think this whole thing could have played out with the same emotions and opinions, but in like a way more healthy.
Yeah.
Like I would have no problem with Cynthia posting and saying like, actually, like, the reason why we changed it slightly, like I looked in the cameras, because it was important for me to show my eyes, and like I've embodied this role. It's important to me.
Yeah.
And like I didn't feel comfortable just sort of covering up because to me that would feel like it was erasing me from the story, and like I wanted to and so I don't appreciate this edit, and like I prefer this one. That
Totally
like,
valid. I mean,
and then it's like, okay, well, she has her opinion. Like she's like the creator says, like perfectly valid to have that opinion.
Yeah.
And like her justification makes sense to me. Like, okay, I would get it. Like you're in this movie poster. It's a big thing. Like,
And I think it's cool. I think it's cool because it is paying homage to like the original Broadway poster, but you're putting your own spin on it. I think that's awesome. Like, good for her. Like,
yeah,
and everyone who was involved in the production of this, because I'm sure it wasn't just her opinions that had the final say in like what this poster is going to be as well. I mean, like there's lots of people.
Yeah, I mean, just marketing. Like it makes sense. It makes sense to me that a marketing team would want to be able to see the faces of their stars on the movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's like I don't really have any problem with the way that they made the poster. Like, again, I'm not like a huge like wicked purist or something. Like, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I think the edit's fine. I think just the fact that this has become this like viral trending thing for days on social media, and like people having to weigh in on it and stuff, and is just because I feel like it reflects this culture we have of just assuming the absolute worst.
Yeah.
Like everything is sort of this nefarious, the murky motivations, and sort of this like, I guess this like victimhood that it's like, well, we know that, that this thing isn't actually like an attack on me, but could be seen that way. Or, there's a version of this that is me. And like, it's sort of like, it's getting mad about what's not there.
Right.
For the sake, rather than just like, okay, but like, is it that thing? Like, is this an offensive attack to erase you or whatever it might be? Or is it something totally different? And I feel like and if it is an attack, like, then speak out about that. Like, there are times I think to be offended and mad about stuff. It's when we make things that aren't offensive and aren't at least intended in any kind of mean-spirited way. When we make everything this controversy, this attack, this like victimhood thing, then it's like nothing is, because everything is. Like,
right.
You can't be mad about just everything. And if like everything that anyone does, regardless of intention, is like this mean thing and reflective of this sort of, this attack and this culture and this hatred, like, then I just think people don't have the bandwidth to deal with that. So we just stop caring about all of it. And it's like, because I'm sure there are, as a celebrity in a movie, and especially like a black woman, like there's stuff that she's dealing with or she has to experience on social media that I probably don't as a white man that's not famous on the internet.
Yeah.
There are things. It's just when you make it like when everything becomes that, it's just, I feel like you actually like you add more fuel to the fire than you do actually like contribute constructive stuff to the conversation.
Yeah, and it's sort of like maybe despite what the internet says, I do think maybe outrage is a limited resource. And I think so when you sort of spend your outrage credits on something like this, that's you've imputed the person's intention, and so you're not outraged about the thing itself. It's like it's what you perceive to be the intention behind it that you're outraged about, that may or may not be true and is likely not true. And if you like rally your troops around this thing to be mad about, well, that has a cost, I think, to one, your own credibility, and two, just how much are people willing to go along with that the next time you bring up something. And maybe there is something down the road that is really egregious and that needs to be talked about or brought up or be outraged about. But because you've like, if you have a track record of being outraged about the silliest things, then I think that diminishes your sort of credibility in the long run as well. And it's like, well, yeah, we were upset about the poster thing and this thing and all this stuff that doesn't really even seem like you're sort of finding stuff in the assumptions that may or may not be there. And so now we can't really, we don't have the bandwidth to be mad about this thing that we actually should be mad about, but we've spent it all on silly stuff.
Yeah, and I think you just don't mend roads through anger. Like I think because you can see the same thing play out with like politics or if this person votes for the other side than I do, then we assume a lot about them.
Right.
They're doing this because they're racist or because they hate this or because they don't care about these issues or these people, and just that. It's like that's such a plight on our society right now. Is just sort of that assuming the worst of people, a lack of grace, a lack of willingness to just share our opinion and have a conversation about it, rather than sort of speaking to people, instead of speaking with people. So we'll see what happens. Again, I'm seeing this movie in a couple of weeks, so we'll see how the movie itself, if some of that controversy and stuff bleeds over into the movie. But speaking of other things that you will be able to see and perhaps watch while chowing down on a Chick-fil-A sandwich. So we talked about several episodes ago, a couple months ago, the rumors were swirling that, Chick-fil-A was branching out of the chicken sandwich business into the world of entertainment, which was just a weird thing to consider. And they have done that because they just kind of, the rumors were around, but they have released their own press stuff for that they are in fact releasing their own Chick-fil-A app, shows, a bunch of stuff. So again, we don't want to get tons into this, but there's a couple of the details that they announced because we were questioning when the rumors came up that the name will be Chick-fil-A Play, kind of the slogan, family time at your fingertips. And they describe it as free digital fun and kid-friendly content, including original shows, podcasts, games, recipes, and much more. And if you kind of get into some the quotes and stuff from the marketing people, it seems like this is it's still not exactly clear what's all this is going to be.
Yeah.
But it seems like the intention is designed to this is sort of some fun thing that's not going to be a time, you're just binging all the time and, I'm going to go home on my weekend and just binge Chick-fil-A Play. Is this sort of this resource that's out there with some shows, some games, some stuff that as a family you can kind of do together. And they even say, imply, while you're waiting in the drive-through line, there's different things as you're on the go.
Which joke's on them. There's hardly a wait in the drive-through line.
That's the thing.
So.
It better be a 30-second show.
Yeah.
And even they say, because some of the stuff, there's going to be some podcasts, original scripted podcasts, which they describe as kid-friendly ones to listen to on the way to school or practice, or essentially just wholesome entertainment and diversion or whatever that can be done within the context of a family. But are you excited to add some Chick-fil-A Play to your waffle fries?
Maybe. We'll see. I don't know. It's just kind of on the one hand, it makes sense, but on the other hand, it doesn't. And so this is really curious to me. I can maybe see why they would do something like this. But I don't know. I mean, it's to be determined, I guess. I kind of have mixed feelings about it. One, I don't hardly ever eat at Chick-fil-A. And I don't have do you use the app? No. They have a Chick-fil-A?
I'm way too old school for that.
Yeah. So one thing I saw was I think you can play some games and maybe earn credits in the app for food, maybe.
Okay, now I'm on board.
Which if they do that,
get some waffle fries.
Yeah, I mean, I feel okay. Well, there's your gamifying your, quick service, Chick-fil-A food. That's interesting to me. And I mean, as a parent of young kids, kid-friendly entertainment, I guess, is always a welcome thing.
And it kind of looks good because they're sort of the one seems like they're their mother's flagship show or whatever is called Evergreen Hills. I think Journey or Venture into Evergreen Hills, and it's just animated thing, and it's kind of a fantasy. There's this other world, and when you do nice things that these trees grow and have powers, but bad people are going to steal it. And I don't know, it looks like the kind of thing you would just find on Disney or something, but it's the sort of Chick-fil-A thing. The quality's fine. Like it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't look real cheap, and it looks interesting to me. But I'm with you a little bit of sort of like, what's the end game though? Like what I get. Part of me is like, okay, there's a lot of entertainment, a lot of things. Maybe as a parent, we don't want our kid like that isn't wholesome entertainment anymore.
Yeah.
That like, hey, here's a company that has tried to have these values of family and community and stuff, and like has backed that up with some of their actions and stuff, and like they're trying to fill some of that niche. Or, hey, we can be a part of the solution to that. I just wonder, like, 2 years from now, how many people are going to be like pulling up the Chick-fil-A Play app and following the next season of Evergreen Hill. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Like it's almost like, can you do that without really committing, like with this sort of being the side thing, fast food or fast service,
quick service.
Like, can you really do that? Is there, or does there need to be? Like, I can't imagine this would like make them money. Like, it's like,
yeah, I guess my question would be like, what's driving this? I would assume that there's like a customer base that's like, what we would love is like some wholesome entertainment. Is this like employee base? Like, are there employees at HQ like clamoring for, like, hey, we're a big company. Like, why don't we make our own wholesome entertainment? All that rot on Netflix and Disney. Like, so I don't know. Like, I'd be really curious to find out like, where does this come from? And like you said, what's the end game?
And the real question too is like, how much product? I know some of these animated shows,
yeah,
they're going to be about like the Chick-fil-A cows, like, is it
going to like save the
like before we go to Evergreen Hills, like, we're hungry. Good thing Mommy brought a Chick-fil-A sandwich, complete with the
yeah, or is it like watch, it's sort of like the like with Amazon or something, watch a 10-second commercial first. And then you can get into the gameplay or like, whatever's new from the Chick-fil-A menu, or I don't know. Like, I feel like it'll probably be done well. But I feel like it could really go either way as far as like, this could be really fun. And I think it could be a real niche audience for it. And I think I feel like you could develop a real cult following with some of this kind of stuff. Like if you do it right. But also it could just be kind of this weird sideshow thing, and we'll look back on it and be like, hey, remember the time that like a quick service joint tried to get into the like entertainment business? So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't anticipate this like really sending ripples. Like Disney's calling a meeting now to, their boardroom to figure out how do we combat the competition of Chick-fil-A Play. But just because it's not the biggest thing ever doesn't mean there's no value. So we'll see. It comes out soon. I think like next month. Like, so maybe we'll do a deep dive review.
Yeah, we'll download
the first
the app
episode of Evergreen Hills and those.
We'll do like a real gameplay review. Like how you stream the screen and like we'll see how it goes.
Do some like reaction videos. The possibilities are endless. So stay tuned for what Chick-fil-A is cooking up for entertainment. Speaking of entertainment that is also, I think, wholesome, and companies that are stepping into that niche, Angel Studios is sort of one that's been. I think they've been crushing it. Like, not all their stuff are necessarily the best thing I've ever seen, but like they've had some good stuff lately.
Yeah.
A lot of positive reviews, and in many ways, I feel like they're sort of at the top for sort of faith-based, wholesome stuff as far as like quality goes, and doing some interesting stuff marketing-wise. Kind of their next big movie coming out is Bonhoeffer, pastor, spy, assassin, which
dun dun dun.
That will draw you in. So this is a movie. I think it comes out like November 22nd. I've seen the movie. It's under like review embargo for another week or two, I think. So I'm not necessarily I don't think I'm allowed to tell you what I think of it, other than I thought it was good. But more details coming for that. But one thing we did, I was able to do, kind of leading up to the release of this, is I was able to interview the producer, or one of the producers of this, John Scanlon. We have the full review up on our YouTube channel, and the transcript up on our collision.org website. But it's a good interview. Like, I think this guy, he knows his stuff. He's been around for that industry, and I think he just has a good perspective on, like being Christian and making movies, and how do you balance some of that. And so with that, we just play one quick clip of the larger interview, in which I kind of asked him, so, this is a movie set in the historical, World War II backdrop, and yet it's releasing today in 2024. So, kind of, in what ways can a movie like this or Bonhoeffer's life like resonate with and inspire people today? So, check out his answer for that.
There is a sort of eternal struggle taking place on screen here, where you have a man of faith who's totally committed to the Lord, totally living out of his heart for Jesus, but sees himself confronted with impossible choices and has to struggle to overcome those. And some of those are political, some of those are personal, some of those are cultural. And I do think there's an aspect of what do we as Christians do in living out our faith in this world under these very trying circumstances, domestically and internationally in political terms. I think we can find a voice and a vision and a role model, really, in the Bonhoeffer film. But again, that was never our intention. We didn't make this film as a tutorial on how to sort of survive tumultuous political times. But I do think that you'll come out of the theater entertained, inspired, maybe with another dimension or a different way of thinking about how you engage with politics and the culture in our time. I do think there's plenty of meat there for anybody who's serious about engaging.
So I enjoyed that interview a lot. Could you guys check out the full thing, because he's got some good perspectives, and I just enjoyed that conversation. And check out the movie when it comes out on November 22nd, because I do think it is one of the better faith-based stuff that I've seen in a while. But checking out something else that we can all do coming up before November 22nd, and that is Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
So that is coming up soon. I mean, like next week.
Yeah.
A week from the day this thing drops. And it's always, I'll be honest, I kind of went back and forth if we should even talk about this, because I feel like it's sort of the annual discussion of like, what do Christians do about Halloween? And I feel like we've, in various capacities, we've had that conversation, and I don't know if the fires of that conversation are as heated as they once were.
I feel like probably our childhood, maybe they were the embers were hot, and I think at this point, I feel like a lot of that has kind of died down, because I think the culture around it, at least here, in the southeast of America, have maybe changed quite a bit from what they once were.
Yeah, because I don't know about you. I remember even growing up in Canada, our church for many years, our youth group and stuff, they would have a youth event on Halloween night, and it was just not a good idea, because it very much became separate the sheep from the goats. Are you gonna be if you're not there singing our God is an awesome God and hearing the sermon or the lecture or whatever, we know it's probably because you're out trick-or-treating with the heathens.
Getting the devil's candy.
I won't tell you which party I ended up belonging to.
Yeah, well, I don't think we need to guess. Daniel.
Other than that, I could fill up some sleeping bags with some of those candy trick-or-treating. But I think from maybe some of that, the heated conversation, maybe we've all just got tired of the conversation a little bit. But I do think it still is a valid question to have. And again, you sort of experience it in different ways. I didn't really care about that conversation anymore growing up. But now I have kids, and now they, some of their friends don't go, and some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How do you sort of engage with it? And I feel like, although maybe the conversation isn't as robust as maybe it was a decade or two ago, there still just is a lot of unease. I still, and I'm pro trick or treating, as you can probably tell. I grew up trick or treating. My kids go trick or treating, but I don't think that it's not valid either. I don't think, a day that sort of, there is some connotations, this the whole spooky aesthetic, and I mean some of the costume. There are things around Halloween that I don't think it's entirely silly for Christians to be is this appropriate? Is it better to refrain from this? What do you what are some?
I mean, I think it's I think it is valid to maybe be on guard, during Halloween, because there are some maybe more nefarious and scary and gory aspects of it. But I also think, and we've said this before, but it's kind of what you make of it. And I think kids dressing up like superheroes or perhaps their favorite animated princess, like I think it's just a way to have fun, and I think it's a way for kids to be kids, and like we had even at our church we had a what's now the rage. I think like I don't know how many people go trick or treating, but I think everyone goes trunk or treating, and it's kind of interesting how like that has I think changed a lot of sort of the Halloween stuff and the conversation is like you're not really like I don't know too many people who like go into neighborhoods and trick or treat now, but it seems like every church on every corner has like a trunk or treat between now and Halloween, and it's sort of like kind of turned Halloween on its head a little bit.
Well, yeah, 'cause we've sort of, at least in our context of like we're in Georgia, like it's funny because like the narrative was always that Christians are sort of against Halloween. It's very like, and like now it's the narrative has almost become like Christians are like leading the charge. Like they won't call it Halloween.
No, fall festival.
Yeah, family fun fall festival or whatever
Yeah.
where we happen, it's like the day or two before Halloween and we all
Yeah.
dress up in costumes and give out candy and pumpkin bags
Yeah.
but it's not Halloween though. It's
Yeah.
family fun fall festival. But it is funny that like it's become like because I'll still take my kids out most years we have like to go trick or treat in the neighborhoods and like down here it's just hard to find like it's almost not where like, you go to a neighborhood and there's houses that are doing it, but like it's not like when I grew up, like every house,
Yeah.
you just clean up in your neighborhood. Like we'll have to drive around and like this seems like some of the enthusiasm and then like COVID and some different things have sort of
Yeah.
derailed the momentum. But like you said, but like churches are still many churches like are now the place to go where it's like hey, and there's advantages to that too. Like it's
Yeah.
a contained location. You kind of trust, even if you're not a church goer, like you assume that the church will be, the church parking lot is a little safer than like, some random neighborhood in the
Yeah.
dark and people you don't know. And like, and because like you said, we just had ours a couple of days ago on Saturday and like tons of people there. Like we both had
Yeah.
a trunk next to each other. My family was inside out.
We were frozen,
and
as you might expect.
and just being able to love like to me that's sort of what this has become is like I think there's a place to question some of like the aesthetics and like there's things like I want to let my kids dress up as like there's still things to be cautious about, but it's sort of like in philosophy they call it like the genetic fallacy, and it's this idea that like you don't really judge something today just by where it came from. Like
Yeah.
like if there's like a school that maybe like decades ago was founded and they were segregated or they were very liberal theologically or things and like not that that's not an important part of the story, but like today maybe they're none of those things. Like there's
Right.
different leadership, different values, like
Different decade or century or whatever.
yeah, and it's sort of like do we avoid that school? And I won't put my kids there because back in the 1800s the school started the guy that founded the school was a racist, and I don't want to
Yeah.
but like the principal now is not like
Right.
it's like sort of judging based on what it is. And I think for Halloween, in many ways, that's where I land on that. Is like,
Yeah.
okay, you can do a deep dive into like, some of the possible roots of like Halloween and what's connected to the Day of the Dead or this different thing. And for me, it's like, but is that what it is now? Like,
Yeah.
is it this sort of, like when a kid comes to my house and like a Superman costume and, my neighbor and I give him a Kit Kat bar, like, is that some sort of like ritualistic satanic thing, or is it just
Yeah.
a community kind of cultural event that we can engage with and like, connect with people? Which seems like that's like, not that there aren't still those that are already drawn to sort of the darker side of it that maybe still like, yeah, Halloween, like we're gonna go do weird Ouija board stuff on the side. Like I'm sure there's still people that are
Sure.
celebrating that way, but I think but it's not like that's in the sense, like it's not like I have to celebrate that way, or that
Right.
most people, the kids coming to my door, are going to be celebrating in that way.
Yeah,
Like,
and I don't think like the majority of people are into that. Like I think there's always going to be sort of the fringe that are into the occult stuff, and like Halloween or no Halloween, they're still going to be into that stuff. And so I think it is more, it's sort of the same with like Christmas. It's like there's some pagan origins of Christmas and Christmas trees and some of these things. It's like Well, yeah, but like I don't think anybody today is celebrating that, and I think it's the same with Halloween. It's like nobody is sort of celebrating. I mean, not nobody, but most people around you are not going to be sort of celebrating, death and destruction and, horror and all of these sort of things. It's like, it's a fun time to play dress up and go get candy, like, and to like see your neighbors and, be together with your community. And I think that, by and large is a good thing.
Yeah, and there's, especially with some of the cultural context now, I think there's just a lot of value in those sort of built-in kind of, festivals or not ritual, like routine sort of customary cultural things. Because a verse that kind of that I've always thought of that I think has a lot of similarities to the Halloween question is in 1 Corinthians kind of 1:8, where it's the whole debate back in the early church about like meat that was sacrificed to pagan idols.
Yeah.
And it's like, do we eat that meat? Like, and the church was divided over that. Like, some were like, hey, I won't turn down a good piece of meat. I'm hungry. And other people that just felt very uncomfortable with like, I know, it's meat, but like it was used in such a dark way that's so contrary to my own spiritual beliefs and convictions that I don't know if I want to even, bring that into my house or consume that or eat that. And I think Paul's response to that is still relevant for us with the Halloween thing. He doesn't dismiss the question, or like he doesn't be like you bunch of soft Christians, like, just eat the meat. Like, what are you like? It's not like he's very dismissive in that way, but he also just kind of, I think, recognizes like, but what is important? Like, is this just meat? Like, is there more to it? Where he says, whether you eat or not, like, says, food does not bring us near to God. We are no worse if we do not eat, and no better if we do. Essentially, just like it's meat. Like, if your own convictions make you uncomfortable, stay away from it. If you don't have conviction about that, like, it's just meat. Like, it's not like there's like dark spirits in that meat. Like, eat, don't eat. But I think to him, like his thing was like, I think like, unity was like more important than just like conformity. Like, he's sort of saying, whether you eat or not, I guess it's meat. That doesn't bring you closer or further from God. But what is more important is like the division and the, turning, making this an us versus them. Like, we're the good Christians, you're the bad Christians, or, we're the strong Christians, you're the weak ones that can't do it, can't eat meat. Like, I think those sort of things, like that, for him, that was a bigger issue than just whether they eat meat or not. And that's sort of what I feel about Halloween. Like, if you don't celebrate Halloween, then like you're not gonna, there's other things to celebrate. Christmas is coming out, and Thanksgiving's coming up. Like, it's not the end of the world. If you do celebrate it, like, you're not a terrible, sellout Christian that just, adopts the world's dark spirit.
One foot in the world.
You're essentially, you should start, wearing a witch hat or, stirring a cauldron because you're that close into the occult. Like, I don't think it's that. I think like the bigger issue is when it becomes this sort of dividing thing within the church. But I do think if you do, if your convictions don't lead you away from it, I think it can be a very powerful thing. Like, because even like we did that trunk or treat thing, and like I got a message from someone else at our church that like taught some kids in Sunday school, and like he was asking them in a different context about like Disney movies and what their favorite one, and like one of them said like, like, my favorite movie is like Inside Out, and then they got all excited and it's like, and I actually met them. And meaning like they came by our trunk where we were dressed up as all the different emotions. I was dressed as anger, and the kid's like, and I met anger, and he was just really nice and made me feel special. And like, I mean, like that warms the heart, like, and like, I don't even know what kid that would be.
And what are the odds that the one time you're nice,
I know,
it's to this kid? Like, wow.
I figured because I was dressed as anger, I could for once not have to act angry. I could express it just through my.
How amazing.
But just things like sort of that. Like, we had the opportunity. We could have sort of been home shaking our head and, it's just, don't want to be a part of that. And again, I'm not judging if that is what you do. But like, instead, we were like, hey, there's people are trick-or-treating. This is sort of this cultural thing. We have the chance for like 3-4 hours to just have a stream of kids coming through, many who like don't go to church, and like just talk to them and like share and like, just bless them in a way, give them candy. Like, if there's a big line, like I would sort of goof around with them and talk, and like, you just don't know the impact of that. And I feel like in so many ways, like that, the value of that is bigger than like that's going to do more positive for the church and Christianity than sort of Christians sort of boycotting or like the dangers of, I don't think anyone in the community is like looking at Christians dressed as like a Disney character and being like questioning our witness. And like,
Yeah.
like they must, their God must not really be true if they're going to celebrate Halloween. Like,
Right.
but I do think the other side is true of like, hey,
Yeah.
this is a church that is actually a part of our community. They're opening themselves out up to us. Like they're not just hiding behind their walls. Like, and they're blessing us. And like, again, a bunch of them will just grab the candy and move on. But like, you never know when God can like, actually use that in a way as like a witness in the community.
Yeah. Well said.
And I think too, this like there are so few moments like that now. Like
Yeah.
there's so few. Like there's a bunch of research on that of just like sort of those cultural community building things, like like things like the mall or the movie theater, all these things that are sort of like the meeting spots, and like the way where we actually get out of our house and like meet neighbors. And
Yeah.
stuff. Now we just there are less things like that now.
No, for
And,
sure.
we're on our screens more and we're not connected. That I think things like Halloween or different, others, not just Halloween, but things like that are still opportunities for the church to just engage with a neighbor like face to face.
Well, and I think there's a reason why a lot of like towns and cities still put on, these sort of yearly festivals, whether it's for Halloween or like Independence Day or Christmas. I think there is still that like desire and that need for community. And I think as the church, what better place to get plugged in and to at least meet and bless the community that God's placed you in. And so I think anytime you can get out and meet people in your community, I think is a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah, and I think if God only wanted us to, like, our only allegiance or whatever is like the kingdom of heaven, then I feel like He would just have taken us to heaven. Like He still placed us like on this earth and like in our physical, communities and towns.
Yeah.
I think like, there still is a responsibility for us to like, not that we our top allegiance is to God and to like, the kingdom things, and that's where our priority should be. But like, we should also be a presence in like the physical earthly communities that we are in. So hey, if you do celebrate, if you don't celebrate, be safe. And if you do celebrate, make sure you steal all your kids' sour candies, as I tend to do. But if you're not celebrating, something else you can do is go check out some movies at the theater, which leads us to the next segment of this podcast we have out now and coming soon. So as far as out now, like not a whole lot. I mentioned last week that Exhibiting Forgiveness movie. I thought it was fine. I don't think it's like it seems more like a movie you would watch at home on streaming. I guess it's sort of a slow, serious drama. I don't know if it's worth going to pay to go and see it in theaters, and I don't see like the box office to know like if anyone did go see it. But I do think it is an interesting kind of raw exploration of just like trauma and spirituality and some of that. I wasn't able to go see that Smile 2 movie. My wife ended up in the emergency room or the urgent care and wasn't able to make it to the theaters.
Sounds like excuses to me, Daniel.
She timed that well, so I got to instead come home and watch a hockey game. And watch my kids too. But I've heard the movie's actually good. Like I don't know, it's still to me it still looks so silly. But apparently it's getting like rave reviews, one of the best horror movies of the year. So I'm curious if you guys did go see that. Let me know if I'm missing out on anything, because I don't think I'll be able to go back and catch up on it. Kind of the movie coming out, the big one coming out this week is Venom: The Last Dance. Kind of the third in the trilogy of.
There's been 3, huh?
There has been 3, and this will be the first one that I've seen. So I haven't seen the first 2. Like, they must be popular enough to have a third one. They've made it clear this is the last one. I mean, Tom Hardy is the main character in this. Good actor. Like,
yeah.
So I don't know. Like, to me, I'm so burnt out of sort of these superhero movies.
Yeah. Or anti-superhero.
Yeah. So these like, I don't like. I have no interest really. Like, if I wasn't going to review it, I wouldn't go see this movie.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll be surprised. And
you never know, Daniel. Give it a chance.
And so stay tuned.
Third time's the charm, as they say.
On our channel, we'll have a full review for that. But something else I've decided to give a chance for another week is the next segment of this podcast, the last segment, which is things we like that you should like too.
So I thought with all of candy being distributed this year or this time of year, and Halloween, and trunks filled with all the goodies, it would be a good time maybe to mention this fun app that I've recently discovered. Shout out to my sister and brother-in-law for mentioning this. It's called Yuka, Have you heard of this, Daniel?
I have not,
Oh boy.
but I'm intrigued.
Yes. So this is, you can get it for, your smartphone, and it's just an app. It's spelled Yuka. It's got a little carrot on it. And you can just scan the barcodes of any like food or cosmetic item, and it will rate it. And so it's like based on like calories, fat content, sugar content, additives to it. And so like if you want to feel bad about what you eat, or like the stuff that's in your pantry, like just go through and like scan it all and just see, like, it'll tell you like, okay, this is a 0 out of 100, and it's like your favorite brand of chips or whatever, and it'll tell you why, which I think is really cool. So I've been like obsessed with this for a few weeks now, and just going through, like our family's pretty, like, we eat pretty, I guess, clean, and like we eat a lot from scratch, and so we do a lot of cooking at our home, and so I think we're in general pretty good. But even for us, it was like, the stuff that we like, or the crackers or whatever, various things. You're like, okay, yeah. Some of it just like, I knew that was going to be like a terrible, like a nutritional decision. But others were surprising on both, like, oh wow, this is better than I thought, and also this is worse than I thought it would be. So check it out. I just think it's cool because it is kind of empowering for people to just, and it's just fun to, like, who doesn't love scanning things, to just scan food that you see in the grocery store and say, oh, okay, like I could get this thing, but is there an alternative that is like has less additives in it? So yeah, go check it out. Yuka.
Yeah, so if you want to feel just horrible about yourself.
Yeah, scan all the hot Halloween candy that you get, and it's like, okay, this is like basically all poison.
Yeah, which I mean, like, I feel like you could also go by that score to tell you what's going to taste the best. Because
Yeah.
like, a little bag of chips. I could also get the cauliflower chips, but I don't want to get that.
Well,
I want to get,
because that's the thing. Because like the thing that's surprising is some of the stuff that's like, supposedly a better alternative. It's like, oh, it's like veggie whatever. It's like, oh, it's just as full.
Oh yeah, there's and like fake sugar is.
Oh yeah,
is
or like
terrible.
fake flour, or like
or even like
fake
if you
meat.
look at, I know one of the big myths that when I was trying to be healthier, that is like usually the highest calorie thing you can get at a fast food place is their salad. Like I think that's always if I just get the salad,
Yeah.
the salad dressing is worse than like
Everything
the chicken
else.
and the egg. It's
Yeah.
always the highest thing on the menu, but yeah, some of I do think there would be some value in that. If
Yeah,
like
it's
an awareness of like, okay, this thing I think I'm being good. Like when I want to be good, I don't want to like be making the effort and actually eating bad stuff.
right.
But when I want to be bad, I don't necessarily want
Well, and I think
the
that
angel on my shoulder to be like, "Are you sure you want to eat that?"
yeah, don't listen
Your
to
kids,
him.
Sour Patch Kids, like I do want to eat that.
Yeah, well, and I think that the sort of the way that I've looked at it is it's like it's just empowering to know these things, and it's also like to know like, well, I have a ginger beer once a week or something, and it's like, you know what, like it's terrible for you, but I'm not drinking that every day, and it's like that's okay. Or like you have ice cream or whatever, and it's like, okay, you can, like, this is not good for you, but I think if you like limit it, then you're fine. And so, but if it's like you eat this snack every single day and actually it's really terrible for you, well, then maybe adjust the stuff that you're eating every single day. Not to make this like a whole nutrition podcast, but like I think it's really cool, and I think you would totally deep dive into this and get obsessed.
I totally
So,
would get it.
You're welcome.
But I'll wait to download it until after Halloween.
Yeah,
After
that's probably a good idea.
After I've pillaged my kids for all the good stuff.
Just make yourself
just leave them
sick.
the Tootsie Rolls and the stuff that no one wants.
Oh yeah,
And just any of those gummy or sour things. It's like, that stuff is
all the lollipops with no filling on the inside.
Yeah, don't tell me that those aren't good for me, because my soul, my body is telling me that they are. But what is hopefully nutritional and would rate well on the Yuka app is this podcast. There's nothing bad, nothing sugary.
No additives.
Just pure, good, organic, good stuff. So we're excited that you have joined us once again for just conversations on Christ, faith, perspective on culture. And we hope that you will join us next week, every Thursday, for more conversations on faith and pop culture.